Hey guys, my name's Ron White. I'm a two-time USA memory champion. I used to hold the record for the fastest to memorize a deck of shuffled cards in the United States. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how a United States Navy SEAL helped me get faster at memorizing a deck of cards. What? Yes, a United States Navy SEAL helped me get faster at memorizing a deck of cards. And this is a lesson that you can apply to your studies, getting better grades, your life, your business, whatever you want. So, how in the world could by the way, I have a memory course. It's called Black Belt Memory, and it's a wonderful memory course. This video is going to be on memorizing cards, but you can use this course to remember names and faces, get better grades, remember what you read, take tests better, learn foreign languages. Click the link down below, and I have a free gift that gives you tips on how to improve your memory. Plus, you can find out about my Black Belt Memory course in the link down below. Now, how did a United States Navy SEAL help me get faster at memorizing a deck of cards? Well, in 2009, I was training for the USA Memory Championship. Started training in 2008, and I wanted to not just win the tournament, I wanted to break the current record. The current record was 1 minute and 40 seconds. So I set a goal to memorize a deck of cards in 90 seconds or less. And as I set this goal, I hired a United States Navy SEAL to be my coach. Now, people thought that was the craziest thing in the world. What does a Navy SEAL know about memory tournaments? Nothing. But what do they know about competition? A lot. There's a competition to become a Navy SEAL. It's called BUDS. Now, the competition is with yourself, but it's still a competition because you're not competing against the other guys to become SEALs. You're competing with yourself to become a SEAL. What does a Navy SEAL know about competition? A lot. What do they know about focus and discipline? A lot. So I hired him. And as I hired him, he just began asking me questions. He said, Ron, let me ask you this question. How are your competitors training for this tournament? How are they training to memorize a deck of cards? And I said, well, they'll be training maybe in their kitchen, their living room. They'll turn off the TV. They'll turn off their radio. They'll get the kids to go outside and play in the backyard, and they'll train in total silence. And then they'll memorize a deck of cards, and they will see how fast they can do it. And he said, that's interesting, but that's not how a Navy SEAL would train. I'm like, how would a Navy SEAL train? He said, a Navy SEAL trains with everything going wrong, with chaos going wrong. My Navy SEAL coach was TC Cummings. And TC said, we will train in they'll be firing off weapons above our heads, and we'll be hearing that noise as we're training. We'll be training with chaos around us. He said, we have a saying in the SEALs: the more you sweat in times of peace, the less you bleed in times of war. Let me say that again. The more you sweat in times of peace, the less you bleed in times of war. And what he was saying is we make our training so difficult that when we get to war, we don't just win, we dominate, because sometimes war can be almost easier than our training. He said, you need to make your training more difficult than the tournament. I'm like, how do I make my training more difficult than the tournament? You sit at a desk and you memorize a deck of cards. He said, well, let's make it more difficult. I'm like, what could we do? And we started brainstorming. And this is what he said. He said, Ron, I want you to get a wetsuit, because it was wintertime. I want you to get a wetsuit. You know, when you put on a wetsuit when you go surfing, I want you to get a wetsuit. I want you to get plastic playing cards, and I want you to get snorkel gear. And I want you to memorize a deck of cards underwater. Check this video out. I want you to imagine this. You are at the swimming pool, and some crazy guy is wearing a wetsuit. He has snorkel gear, and he has plastic playing cards. He jumps in the other end of the pool, and he starts memorizing a deck of cards underwater. This is what I did. I would train, and I would memorize a deck of cards underwater. I got to the point where I could memorize a deck of cards so well underwater that I could do it faster underwater than anybody in the United States at that time could do above water in perfect conditions. Imagine this. You're memorizing a deck of cards underwater. What's happening? Well, you're floating. You begin floating. You have to block your consciousness now. Okay, ignore the fact that I'm floating. Water was dripping into my mask. I had to ignore that the water was dripping into my mask. I had to not panic. Sometimes when you're snorkeling, especially if you're claustrophobic, you can panic. I had to calm myself through my breathing. So I had so many things going on, working on calming myself through my breathing. Not being distracted by floating, not being distracted by the other people walking around the pool, not being distracted that it was a little bit cold, not being distracted that my mask was flooding up with water a little bit, and staying focused on the task. Now I'm going to be honest with you, that breathing that I had to do during the memorizing, it was keeping me relaxed, and that keeping me relaxed definitely helped me in the tournament. So then I would jump out of the water and I would reassemble it, and I would reassemble the cards. I made my training more difficult than the tournament. What happened when I got to the tournament? When I walked into that tournament, I knew I was going to win. I knew I was going to win. And when I picked up that deck of cards in the tournament and they said go, I just thought, man, this is so easy. I don't have water going down my mask. I'm not having water in my mask. I'm not floating around the pool. There's not people walking around the pool. I picked up the deck of cards, zoomed through it, set it down, 1 minute and 27 seconds. I reassembled a second deck to match the first deck. I broke the record by 13 seconds, which at the time was a significant margin. At the time, this was 2009. I shattered the existing record. Now here's the thing. After that event, there was 50 other people in the room doing the same thing. And one guy raised his hand. He said, I want to protest that round of memorizing. And the judge said, Tony DiTino said, why do you want to protest that round? And he said, well, because there was cameras clicking, and that clicking noise distracted me, and I couldn't focus. Well, guess what? Tony DiTino, the judge, said, overruled. Number one, all the cameras were around me, and he set a record. It didn't bother him at all. And I'm like, there was cameras around me? I had to go back and watch the news coverage and the videos of the tournament, and then I'm like, wow, there were cameras around me. They were surrounding me with cameras, but I didn't even know it. The reason I didn't even know it is because I was so zoned in on the task. The person who was protesting, he had trained in perfect silence. He had trained in perfect conditions. So when he got to the tournament and he heard that clicking, it was distracting to him. I was so zoned in on the task that it was not distracting for me. I made my training more difficult than the actual tournament. How can you apply this to your life? Whatever it is that you're trying to do, if you're trying to study for a test, make your training more difficult than the test. How do you do that? Well, maybe you don't study underwater, okay? Maybe that's not what you do. But maybe you have 60 minutes to take the test. So in your practice, give yourself 45 minutes to go through the practice test. In other words, you're giving yourself 15 minutes less than you would have in the actual test. Why? Because when you get to the actual test, you're going to be trained so zoned in on taking the practice test in 45 minutes that you're going to feel like you have all this extra time and you're going to be more relaxed. And it's going to give you, but if you train for 60 minutes, you may set yourself to that pace. And if you get to some hard questions in the actual test, you may get thrown off. So you can make your training more difficult than the actual test if it's a school test by training in less time. I would do this on the numbers for the USA Memory Championship. It was how many numbers can you memorize in 5 minutes? I would always train in 4 minutes and try to get the exact same score as I would with 5. So when I got to the tournament, getting it in 5 minutes was easy. Make your training more difficult than the actual event. When you get to the event or the test that you're taking in school, you won't just win, you will dominate. What's another way you could make it more difficult? Maybe just have flashcards and zoom through the flashcards and force yourself to say the answers really quick. Now, you want to be getting it right, okay? You don't want to, if you're not getting it right and you don't really understand it, then slow down. But try to get to the point where you can just do it really rapidly, and then when you get to the test, you're not going to be under that same pressure. Matter of fact, when you get to the test, you're going to want to do the reverse, and you're going to want to take your time and go at a steady pace. Make your training more difficult than the actual event. Whatever it is that you're trying to do in life, make it more difficult. And when you get to the event, don't just win, dominate. This is a lesson I learned from my United States Navy SEAL coach, TC Cummings, and that's why I memorized a deck of cards underwater in preparation for that tournament. By the way, I don't do that anymore. It was a fun thing I did for that tournament, but I haven't memorized a deck of cards underwater in 10 years now. If you like this video, I have a memory course called Black Belt Memory. It'll teach you how to memorize a deck of cards, but it'll also teach you how to memorize names and faces, remember what you read, memorize numbers, memorize chapters of books. Click the link down below, and in the description, you can get my Black Belt Memory course. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. I have tons of video on improving your grades, improving your memory, improving your brain. And again, get my Black Belt Memory course in the link below. It's a free gift. At least get the free gift. And then if you like that, get the memory course. I'll see you on the next lesson. My name's Ron White, two-time USA Memory Champion.